Hey there, I'm Eternal, and I'm an object show fan that has barely watched any object shows. We have to fix that. Let's play Object Catchup. Hello and welcome into Object Catchup, the series where we discuss object show episodes right after watching them. Whether they are new or old, famous or unknown, it doesn't matter. We will get to it all. Now, for the next day or two, most likely two, I will see if I can pull off a miracle today. We will be focusing on BFDIA, which means that so far, keep-ups of episodes that I have already watched shows that I've already watched has been paused. Watching any new shows has been paused because BFDIA takes up the schedule and it is a monstrous series. Last time we covered BFDIA, it was one of the earliest catch-ups because we did a BFDIA special with the first batch of episodes after BFDIA come back for episode 4, and if I'm not mistaken, the last time I ended up looking at something was episode 8, there we looked at BFDIA 11. However, before we can of course reach BFDIA 23 releasing in a couple of days, we have to watch 10 full episodes. I will try to watch as many as possible today. However, it's not looking good for me watching too many, so I don't think we can quite pull off a super crazy episode here today. It might be a two-parter, or there's a possibility that I might leave it for just one Omega video in a couple of days. I'm not really sure what we're going to be doing. However, we're going to start off here with BFDIA 12, the episode released right after the next episode that I had to watch. It features Kevin MacLeod, apparently, even though technically every video already features Kevin MacLeod, but I guess we might have some custom compositions or whatever. 21 minutes. Let's go. Let's watch it. Let's talk about it. Boom. Hello, I've just come back from watching BFDIA 12, which is obviously the 12th episode of No, I'm kidding. It's like the 16th or something because of A and B's, right? A, B, C, D, E that BFDIA 5 had. But yeah, we pick up roughly where we left off. There was a bug infestation after one of the doors allowed the bugs through. In the last episode, we have a tennis ball recovery center now, and then we end up doing the elimination with Flower because there's not too much. There's not another host, the host has got to be the Flower. The Flower is the host, so they end up hosting the elimination now with their whole beauty look, which is apparently now extremely scuffed out. From the original, it's like super green. It low-key looks kind of alright though. I'm not gonna lie. It's pretty solid. I'm an enjoyer of it for sure. And then we have the elimination. This episode, I'm not gonna lie, it gives off Carrie vibes through and through. Like it's written by Carrie, and it's got that vibe to it, of like, oh yeah. Like, there's random wordplay here and there, references that happen in a random way. Like, it just feels kind of fun. In a way that a lot of episodes did. Like, as soon as I saw, like, the episode of me, like, the title, this episode features a Kevin MacLeod, like, stop. That's exactly the type of wordplay that the H twins just love to do. It's just this is one of the staples. Just this kind of like mildly nerdy. Haha, that's a fun way to say that. Type humor that they just love. So I mean, yeah, that's cool. That's cool stuff. Absolutely. But then we have ourselves the elimination as the less rad, less dumb team ends up switching themselves back over to Free Smart because I don't really think that it was gonna work, to be honest. The new name tactic, because the thing about Free Smart is just too iconic of a name. I'm not sure if it switched back after the backlash, but at the end of the day, if you think about it, it's mainly just because like it didn't change anything, like it just remained exactly the same. Like they just still called it Free Smart, it would just had a different name that didn't make too much sense, especially now that in this episode we end up having our confirmed elimination, which is Ice Cube. Ice Cube ends up getting eliminated, which is very clear. Let me check with how many votes. There's gonna be background noises today, so let me check with how many votes that Ice Cube gets eliminated. Ice Cube gets eliminated with a grandiose 28,000. Yeah, wow. I mean, I believe out of the Free Smart members, in my opinion, they're probably already the least liked, but now they're like the least liked and just completely lost them the challenge. Right? All they had to do was not say Flower was extremely ugly when and in a good chunk of cases they were honestly better looking than before, but they just completely threw the challenge for the honesty quota or whatever the hell it was. So I mean, yeah, Ice Cube loses. The winner of the prize in the meantime, if I'm not mistaken, was, yeah, it was Ruby by about 4,000 over Book. Yeah, yet again the prize contest ends up being way more similar. I find it interesting. Ice Cube also gets the least likes by a significant margin. Yeah, that makes sense. But prize ends up being to shrink a contestant of your choice with the shrink laser gun. We ask everybody if they like Free Smart. Everybody says yes, except for Pin, who's obviously no face, no limbs, no nothing, and now is the shrunk down to the size of an actual pin, like in real life. So as an item, so that's just absolute GG for them. I don't know how they're ever gonna get back. But Ice Cube gets sent over to the WTF where they're going to be chilling with Gelatin, Metal Fiery, and also Rocky. To be fair to them, nobody there has actually tried to be rebellious enough to run away. To be fair, it's kind of just that the goofy contestants have been there so far, just like the Google like Gelatin is like, oh, you tell me to do this, I'll do this. Fiery, yeah, same thing. Rocky's just gonna sit there anyways, and Ice Cube is kind of just gonna play along with them. So like so far, we haven't ever had a character that actually would want to leave the WTF or like would agree. The characters they're currently the ones that agree to be there by the rules, right? The swap token ends up getting reactivated by Flyer because as the host of BFDIA, you suddenly are allowed to do that. Um, and then you end up swapping over Needle as part of Free Smart. Fries end up going back to their own team, which is alright. And then Spongy ends up getting sent away until they drop back down and kill Flower, which means that we need to have a host, a new host. Golfball yet again does the tactic of calling the first contact and make them the host rather than checking the contact list, which I feel like it's not that difficult of an event to do. You can check the contact list at any time. It takes like 10 seconds. We are conducting Yo-Yo Light research paper. We can't friggin' check one day, like, come on, bro. But all right, then we turn out the first contact is Bugs. Apparently, that's the top contact. So then, of course, they get the memo, and they will now host the show. They speak in Buggies, which Balmy understands because Balmy is the GOAT and the best character ever made. I like how the bugs end up talking through Nickel as well, by sort of taking over, which is kind of interesting. The challenge ends up being a bug-filled dodgeball insanity, which is just kind of a dodgeball. Get hit by a bug or like get bitten by a bug and you're out. Everybody, of course, aims for flies because that will be the first team out. Of course, if you get Fries. Fries just so happened to, of course, become a masterful dodgeballer in this episode because we have to write convenient writing. That means dodgeball doesn't get out immediately, right? Because that's just how it works, right? That's what happens when you write a team of one, which, I mean, they should know what writing a team of one is like. They've done Teardrop and Teapot, but I guess we're still writing teams of one. I'm not necessarily a big fan of teams of one. Like, teams of two, okay. Teams of one, bro. It's like, what the hell? Because, like, it's just not very fair. But, alright then. Eventually, we end up having a tennis ball recovered. We end up also having a couple of things. Oh, yeah, oh my god, I forgot about the joke of the Jack and Jelly fries. I completely forgot about the joke of the Jack and Jelly fries. That's absolute. You see, this is what I mean. This is what I mean, bro, with the friggin' thing. Like, bro, it's the writing is so like reference coded. It's supposed to. It's in a way supposed to be just kind of fun vibe. Just like very much so, nearly completely unserious. Just pointing the finger and going, "Oh my god." It's the word. It's the thing. And it's like, whatever. BFDI is the fun one. People are all being all serious. Let's have the fun one out here, and I'll allow it. If they want to do the fun one, they can do the fun one. A book ends up being our first eliminated contestant. Then who else gets them? Oh, Nickel, because they were in the tennis ball recovery center, and tennis ball threw bugs at it for some reason, even though not considering that they now wouldn't be able to recover from there anymore. And then Needle threw the key that they have to the door. They all end up escaping. The store explodes, and Fries end up yet again escaping again. Meanwhile, the smart duo, the Team No Namers, end up deciding that they need to find, apparently, because of their knowledge, the Queen Bug ends up having anti-poison compared to everybody else's poison, which is what I guess probably makes the Queen Bug the main bug. So they're like, let's go find the Queen Bug. And that way, now that we know the Queen Bug, we can fetch its anti-poison and be able to not ever die, right? We can just immediately recover ourselves. Which, I mean, is a smart tactic here from the duo. Of course, it sometimes is a little bit funky. Like, we have these two characters, which pretty much half of their job is just to introduce new tidbits of information about like the world, where it's just like, oh hey, we know this, and it's like, okay, I guess you would need to know stuff like that if you're gonna be like a scientist like that. So it's like, okay, fair enough, that makes sense. All right, then we end up having 13. The Free Smarters end up also chasing them. Oh yeah, okay. So for some reason, through like the telepathy, whatever landscape is happening, Pin is conversating to Coiny. I'm gonna be absolutely for real. Coiny, I don't know what this is. For a moment I was like, oh yeah, Coiny's dead, so we're talking to him to the after. No, Coiny isn't dead. That's the problem. Coiny is like Nickel's dead. That's what I was confused about. Nickel's dead, not Coiny. So I don't know what the hell this is. That coin, but like, okay, I mean, I guess you can telepathically talk to Pin now if you're like asleep or whatever. Apparently Ruby doesn't like music. Then we end up discovering that 15 dots end up being the amount of the dots. So we have need to try checking the underwater bugs, which aren't that many, but they do end up checking. Oh yeah, and then Ruby finds their sisters. Yes, Ruby finds her sister. So Ruby, okay. So I'm not sure exactly how we, how to say this. So if I'm not mistaken, on the Carrie KH channel, there is a series, but I'm gonna check here, just to make Omega sure, because I'm not very sure, to be honest. Let me check. This is Humany, but this series wasn't a thing on Humany. Let's go to the Carrie K channel, because if I'm not mistaken, one of the things, yeah, Ruby and her 35 sisters in A B C D E F G. So here you can see that series. Because they kind of had like a mini competition about being a Ruby sister. Okay. This was 13. This is August 10, 2012. So this is officially properly canonized. I like how there's like a friggin' image for all of them. But then we end up having some new lore. Apparently, they were seeking to all be in BFDI, but Ruby, with just that extra energy, ends up all joining BFDI more than them. They end up just having more raw energy. And then we discovered that Ruby doesn't get to go to gem school, so they lied to her about going to gem school compared to everybody else, to at least have something back on them. So, okay, I guess. Then Pin gets also thrown at the fries and ends up drowning somehow, but I guess they don't exist anyways, apparently, so okay. And then, by the way, I'm gonna use this moment as Fries ends up in the music scene to point out one thing which I really really enjoy about this episode, and I will say this about every episode. When we have an episode where people can be in or people can be out, absolutely yes, use icons to portray who's in and who's out. When there is this permanent thing on the screen that shows me who is in and who is out, That is one of the top things in the world. I love that. I'm a big fan. More show need to do this. When the Genuinely, don't miss that. This is the best thing that you could possibly do. It makes everything so much clearer immediately, because you can just take an immediate peek at your own leisurely pace and be like, okay, this is it. But if you don't need to, it's super small and it's not a thing. And this takes it one step even extra. It shows off everybody's location in those graphics by directly saying by directly having the background of their location. So if you're on the beehive, there's the honeycomb background. You're in the Goiki forest, there's the trees background, and now you're in the music show, you're in the music background. OMG, that is crazy. That I really like that. I really, really, really like that. Um, so yeah, eventually Evil Leafy ends up taking over Bommy. And then we end up getting the anti-poison correctly and end up going over to Fries, apparently. Ruby ends up agreeing to somehow just swap every 3 seconds with the sisters, which is interesting. Wait, do you jump out here? How does this work? Hold on. I tried to see. No, no, they just swap. Ruby just swaps with the sisters anytime, kind of at random. And then they just end up YOLOing, but I guess we end up doing that. Pencil gets absolutely yeeted. Pin, for some reason, I guess when you have no limbs and no face and no body and no nothing, I guess you maybe gain a higher state of spiritual being. Because Pin is acting way too smart for Pin. Pin is like, I know a way. I know a way to get me back to the spiritual saint is one thing and one method only that I come up with that is 1 billion IQ. Whatever, like, just acting super spiritual, smart, like, oh, yeah, 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 I know this. It's like, okay, bro, what, but apparently, okay, then we have the anti-poison. Everybody ends up going to the music. Rice? Wait. Oh, it's just one rice grain. Oh, okay, this is a recommended character. Um, but then they end up going to the pan flute. So pan flute ends up being Kevin MacLeod. Kevin MacLeod appearing as a pan flute in BFDIA 12 as a guest voice actor. You know, that's not what I expected Kevin MacLeod to sound like. But at the same time, I don't know what I was expecting Kevin MacLeod to sound like. Like it was completely outside of my zone. So yeah, they do a pretty solid job though. To be honest, they're like relatively relaxed in terms of their voice, but it ends up pretty solid. Then we have the fighting. There's the, of course, running gag of everybody being telling everybody to shush so they can hear the music. It just so happens that we have everybody screaming, and we treat it as everybody freaking loving it. Like, oh my god, they're cheering when they're actually screaming about the bugs. Like, it's kind of it's a fun show. It's a fun scene. It's fun stuff. I don't know why the spongy icon was there. Now that I think about it, like, where were they? They were still at the flower shop. Oh, okay. That's why. I mean, I guess they were alive, but I mean, so are a lot of other people, as you can tell. Again, I think I said this in the other episode of BFDIA. Personally, I think there's certain people that I think don't enjoy the presence of recommended characters as actual cast members and other similarly vibed stuff. But in my opinion, I really like it. I really enjoy the possibility of getting to see other cast members from time to time like, not other cast member, other just characters in the universe. It makes BFDI and BFDI not just look like 20 people by themselves on their own, right, in the middle of nowhere, right. It actually makes it look more proper, more it's a world they live in, and even though they're on the outskirts, there's still a thing going on. Especially because, like, it can definitely feel sometimes like there's nobody in the world. Especially, I mean, if you consider the gigantic Yo-Yo City is completely abandoned, literally every single person left it. So it's like, yeah, I mean, it's fun. It's fun. Um, then Fries tries to do the epic dodge. I guess they're not as epic because they are, for sure struggling to do that. We end up having I'm so huge fan of all the royalty free music. Like, they just take the opportunity, absolutely. But yeah, apparently the freaking vibrations from rubbing your hands together okay, would bring desensitize the anti-poison, and then it doesn't work anymore, which is interesting. But okay. And then eventually Nido needs to decide, are you a woe buncher, are you a free smarter? Then Pence ends up saying, however, that you can do a sacrifice. And then they end up doing the sacrifice, saving Ruby, and then their team is safe, as the bugs say, or as the bugs say according to the captions. Which is very true. Um, that means that Free Smart is safe this time around, and everybody else is up for elimination, which is interesting. As you can see, everybody here, it's collectively voted. Bombing, Coiny, Fries, Gorball, Nickel, Pin, and Tennis Ball. They're all stacked here together, which is interesting. One thing which, like you see, but in my opinion, this is kind of biased from the fact that Fries isn't, because I'm pretty sure they've not done it like this nearly ever in the other episode, right? They did team, but in this episode you can't do that, because if you show Fries just on their own, they're probably just gonna get voted. So you have to sort of generalize it, because you've got a team with one person in it and a team with two person in it. You know, like it ends up feeling a little bit off, a little bit weird. But like, okay, then we're gonna have we do it like this. Who do I think ends up getting eliminated? My prediction is Nico. I think Nico gets out. Nico really didn't do that much. Had a little tiny scene at the beginning. They did the Jack and Jello feature, I guess, but they got out in the first half of the episode. And they have already not necessarily been a character that's had too much screen time. So I think Nicholas, the next boot, makes 100% sense. Although there is a possibility of it being somebody like Fries, because they're the only one in their respective team. But I think with this combined voting, we should be good. I'm saying Nico gets out, and then the prize goes to Pin. Pin gets the prize because Pin is doing the whole sob story, you know. Doing this stuff like, yo, do the thing. Finn is like, yo, isn't this not fair, guys? Isn't it just so unfair? Yo, there's a way to solve it. You just have to keep me on the show for another episode, you know? So yeah, that's what that's who I expect to get the prize, even though I don't really know how they're going to be able to spin it. But yeah, overall, this episode is pretty nice. It's pretty fun. I enjoyed it for sure. Even though I don't really know how the hell Pin is able to extraterrestrially communicate to Coiny. I think that is kind of bullshit. I mean, when Coiny's out, fair enough, but like before Coiny's out, what are you doing? Are you just like, are you hallucinating? Is Pin actually talking to you? Just YOLO. Feel like what if Pin actually just isn't doing anything and bro's just hallucinating? And bro's like, oh my god, Pin must be here. Pin literally has to be here. But nope, apparently not. Apparently, Pin is able to communicate through the power of wisdom and ability. You know, they look. They've had a lot of time to meditate with no face, no limbs, no body. So I can respect it. Okay, I mean, that's all I've really got to say about BFDIA 12 here. We talked for roughly the length of the episode. Now, let's keep it moving into the 13th episode of BFDIA, which released right after T-Ball 12. It is titled, Well, Look Who It Is. Let's go, let's watch it. Hello, I have just wrapped up watching BFDIA 13. Well, look who it is. So we end up having it's a relatively it's a big episode. Like, it's a big episode in terms of lore. All right, in terms of amount of important level things that happen in this one episode. This has a lot of them, all right? Because yeah, it does end up being an interesting thing when you write BFDIA, that like in a certain sector, it's like you can do whatever you want. You know, you can technically do whatever you want. However, at the same time, you also need for some things to happen. You know, like for some characters to get new designs, for some characters to act a different way, for some you need things to happen. so that when we eventually get into a new era, then we can swap into in a way that makes sense. So we can do whatever it is up to a certain point, right? And this episode feels like it is majorly, in a way, trying to get things to happen, right? In a way to where like they don't usually, if that makes any sense. All right. So that is what I'm thinking about this episode. We start off here with Flower dying, apparently. So, yeah, that's cool. Cake and Steak ends up being postponed until everybody is alive. So they all go to the Goiki Highway, which now you can see everything. We can kind of understand how the hell the whole Ruby system is working. So there's like one primary Ruby at a time, and then everybody else just follows behind. So that way, when nobody's looking off camera, they all, I guess, occupy the same spot at the same time somehow. And then every scene we swap to a different Ruby, I guess, which is interesting. I'm not gonna lie. I will definitely point out that it's a little bit weird how like the rubies definitely know what happened in BFDIA when how would they know? They were living in a cave the entire time. Right? It's like how did they know? Like did Ruby tell them? But there's no way Ruby gave them a briefing on literally everything that could have possibly happened, Like that's that type of thing was like that's not possible. So how do they know? Was it Ruby that so and I guess yeah, it's in the same way where like they also have every personality. The personalities of everybody is also pretty much the same. So then there's the question: has something like is Ruby speaking for everybody at the same time, or but then the visual is changing, or is there actually just a different person on every time, and it just happened that all of Ruby's sisters act nearly exactly the same and can pass off as Ruby, right? Like that's kind of the question that I don't really know. But I guess we have to find out sometime. We also recover horrifying sludge. Best friend as a kid. Interesting enough, the recovery center is apparently also capable of recovering just anybody, literally any person who died. Is capable of being recovered by the HPRC, which means that that we do have the possibility of just those regular people, right? Like the horrifying sludge is apparently a character in the series. Like everybody's absolutely horrified to see it. Nito ends up sending it back through the recovery center, but in general, yeah, even non-BFDI contestants apparently are capable of getting recovered, which does make for an interesting pair of potential things to do, at least for universally speaking. But either way, we end up having a yellow face recreated, revived, and sent into the WTF. And then we have a couple of laughing. I like how the mouths are really big. But for the first time, we finally figure out how to have the freaking thing. We finally figure out how that they can actually leave the WTF. They have discovered that finally they could walk out. All it took is somebody being mildly annoying. Because like, the problem is they were just too content over in WTF, Like, oh, these months in jail have been excruciating. No, they haven't. You were chilling. Like, the entire time. You were relaxing. You were chillaxing, dare I even say. Bro was alright, there was none of that business, okay? So, like, you were completely fine that entire time. Um, and then like that stuff then we end up so eventually they go leave and decide to explore Yo-Yo City. Then by the way we get to see the LOL again, where of course our eliminated contestants with their current designs are here. However, all of the old contestants, the ones that tried to join, still have their old BFDI contestant style. So we have a bad looking Gaiety Fanny with no legs, right? That's like one of the main asset changes. The tree also doesn't have legs or arms, which is quite different. The clock is the old variant. The marker doesn't have a cap on, right? Like a lot of these are like mild switch ups from usual. It has some interesting stuff. For these characters have interesting things, where like some of them end up being acting the same. Whether it's like, for example, Gaty having the same voice actor, if I'm not mistaken, um, Fanny having the same voice actor, Pi having the same voice actor, but or like Negan having the same voice actor, Saw as well. But a couple of them, if I'm not mistaken, were different. Had like a couple of different sounds. I'm not sure if Grassy was a little bit different. Marker, I'm pretty sure, was a bit different. But like, yeah, so maybe was, but and Lollipop might have been different. I couldn't tell you, but Lollipop was different, to be honest. But a couple of them did sound different than how they sound in T-Paw or BFB, but a lot of them, of course, they rehired the voice actor. Grassy ends up making a line to split between the two, and ends up being the worst line ever drawn. But eventually, we end up having a yo-yo fountain, gelatin, and Co end up just dying all the time, as they end up doing quite some chaos. Then we end up discovering. Oh yeah, we end up discovering the way to get Pin back. So, through the celestiality or whatever that we're somehow communicating to Corny, we have discovered that the best way is to murder Pin specifically through through the trash compactor, because when you die through the trash compactor, you get sent to the bottom of the universe. Okay, you get sent to the bottom of the universe. And then that means that if you dig through the center of the earth, at the center, you will find the underworld, which is that weird IRL area, of course, that we discovered a couple episodes ago. And then we will be capable of doing stuff. So that is interesting. I'm gonna be honest, but all right then. We end up having some stuff. They end up ordering islands. Oh yeah, true. They are off using the Goiki Highway. For some reason, Nito just lets Pencil play out like that, even though like Nito could just go ask Ruby, and Ruby will tell you, yeah, you did the sacrifice. You're now a member. I said so. Like, you fight for yourself, Nito. Fight for yourself. What are you doing? You know, you're off out here going like, oh, yo, like how what person we got out of them? I remember that. Yeah, Pencil doesn't know you're a member. Ask Ruby, or ask, hey, Ruby said that I'm a member, and then you can at least go say to Ruby. Or of course, Ruby, and one of the 35 sisters or whatever, right? Is like, bro, like, come on, what are we doing out here? But okay, then they end up having some Euro transportation. Apparently, Fire is scared of height. Are you? Why? No, hold on. Fire is scared of height is not something that makes a lot of sense on ground level. Because one of the best thing, like one of Fiery's favorite things, right? One of the most historically things that Fiery likes a lot. It's Ferris wheels. Ferris wheels. Fiery likes Ferris wheels. That's one of the things. That's the entire reason why the whole BFDI chaos happened, because they made a Ferris wheel and Levy didn't like it. Right? That's literally the reason. So it's like, hold on a moment. Like, you're afraid of heights, but you like a Ferris wheel where the entire point that you go up as high as possible and you watch? It doesn't make any sense. Especially because that's the safest bridge of all time. But okay then. Apparently the Yo-Yo Transit was the eighth wonder of the world before it was demoted. Bro, what happened? I'm telling you, what happened to Yo-Yo? It was apparently over 600 years ago is when this city turned to dismay. I don't know what happened 600 years ago, but I mean, I'm obviously curious. If there's ever a day, right, where we completely decide to abandon this cast of characters, right, and we try to go back, I would love a season currently, as right now, of course, there's many more BFDI episodes to watch, but I would love a season that takes place in the full complete past with an entirely new cast of people, and then it takes place in an active Yo-Yo City. I think that would just be cool. having an active Yoyo City, having the show take place there. I just think that'd be sick, right? Because one of the minor problems that BFDI has is that it is sort of locked down to the cast that they have, right? Introducing a new person is really complicated, and they're kind of locked into the cast. Everybody likes the cast, so it just ends up being a little bit of a complication. They have sometimes managed to do a couple of things. If I'm not mistaken, they have that video that's really important. Where is it? Oh god. GCAM. Yeah, Grand Fabric Clock and Metronome. This is technically the only ever non-BFDI audio that they made, which is a very interesting little thing, by the way. But it does certainly show off the potential, and it was very well received. That maybe they could sometime do a BFDI, maybe BFDI timeline, but just something not necessarily with this cast of characters, with a completely new set of characters, right? Which I feel like it is a thing that a lot of people I think have been wanting from time to time. I think. Well, of course, a lot of people never want to say goodbye to the other characters, right? I think for certain situations, it has always been at that situation where it's like some people want them to try out new characters, right? It's kind of like when Inanimate Insanity is like, yo, what if Inanimate Insanity had an entirely new cast now that season 4? These guys live happily ever after, and then we keep it going to another thing, and it's like, okay, I mean, I see it, but it's just, bro, so we end up having a couple of things. Eventually, Queenie finds over in the underworld the whole thing, the whole pin, and then eventually tries to get them back up with the. But however, the transition between the underworld and the overworld turns out to be extremely complicated. The people over at the LOL decide to dip because I mean it's not really working. Corny really tries to get pinned back. It doesn't work as far as I'm aware. And keep having the mini pin, which is not great. I mean, to be fair, the hardest part of going to the underworld was digging down there, to be honest. So now that we've dug down there, I mean, it is a realistic possibility that we could just go back, right? Well, we could do that. Then we have a couple of important moments. The biggest moment is well, first of all, we actually replaced a monument on the Science Museum, which of course is important eventually. And then we end up having the enhancement to Yo-Yo Laser, which enhances everything that it touches, making one super tree, a super shop, everybody gets good assets, and eventually they shoot the LOL, which means that everybody officially gets their BFB assets on the board, which is pretty fire. I'm not gonna lie, everybody gets their new assets, and it does it. Look, to be fair, if they want to give an in-universe explanation, right? An in-universe explanation that actually works, that doesn't just freaking destroy everything. It has to be something around this caliber. It just has to be something of this caliber where it hits everybody at once, it works at once. It's just kind of an unlucky event, and it happens because it's just gotta be. There's no way that each one individually would have their own story to come back. Although for some of them, it's obviously very interesting. Why did the marker enhancement give them a cap, right, and all that stuff? But yeah, I mean, if it works, it works. I really like how Gady and Saul were already friends, which is interesting. Saul was like fully brown fence gate, but then they eventually get painted, which is it's quite nice. It's quite fun. Eventually, they order a couple of islands for themselves, and then they end up accidentally enhancing Rocky, which gives them acidic barf, right? Because of course the regular Rocky barf is non-acidic usually, right? In BFDI. However, now it is acidic because that is a part of the BFB Rocky, which they use a lot, right? Like vinegar or whatever. So now that's done. We end up having pretty much in one fell swoop, we end up making uh, three pretty damn important changes to the BFDI timeline at large, and it happens in one moment, in one scene, right? With one moment. So, like, that's kind of quite important. Then eventually, we have a beautifully the lighting on Fiery staring at the tree with leaves on it because it's been enhanced, and thinking of Leafy like, wow, leaves. I like, dude. I love it, dude. I love Fiery so much. Fiery's one of my favorite characters. Fiery's really funny because it's like this guy. You just know that bro had no thoughts in his head. Bro was just looking at the tree. He's like, wow, it has leaves. You know what else is a leaf? Levy. Like is the like you just know there was no, it wasn't a complex thought that he had. He had the simplest thought of all time. At the islands, they are in fact getting delivered. A couple of them do indeed have some goofy stuff on them, and then eventually Fiery, when nobody else is looking, ends up recovering Leafy and then running the hell away, just absolutely playing it blitzo. I mean, you can see the light that Fiery emits going outward, so I have no idea where the hell Fiery went so quickly. Fiery absolutely did the speed running. I'm not gonna lie, that was a speed run out of there. So Leafy doesn't know who revived them, technically, even though, I mean, come on, if you see a light on the ground, it's probably Fiery. And then Evil Leafy, after hearing the voice, manages to melt it, because Evil Leafy and Leafy, the amount of interactions that have had, I'm pretty sure it's 0 or nearly 1. So it'll be interesting to see if those two ever do end up interacting in a more proper way in an episode. I mean, it's kind of difficult because Evil Leafy doesn't ever really interact, quote unquote, with things. So it's always kind of a little bit difficult to point it out, right? And that's the episode, No Elimination, which is interesting considering I do still think that, if I'm not mistaken, the season ends roughly where it was supposed to, right? With episode 24, so I'm not 100 or rather than 25, I don't know, but skipping an elimination is very interesting when, like, we were roughly in line to have the amount of episode we have now, except we don't really. So that means that something probably happens around the next set of the series that's important. Anyways, now it's time for the most viral BFDIA episode, I think, nearly ever, as far as the new set of BFDIA episodes ever. Then BFDIA 6. This is the second most popular, and it is one of the most evergreen videos on the Jack and Jellyfy channel, always earning views even though it's been over a year. BFDIA 14, PointyPointyPointy. It is a pretty superbly long episode, standing at 37 minutes and 27 seconds. Let's watch it. Hello and welcome in to my official discussion of BFDIA 14 Pointy, okay? Now, I mean, obviously this episode deserves a proper discussion, alright? Because Pointy, if I'm not mistaken, ends up, I think, as the most popular object show video of the entire year of 2024. I don't think any Teapot episode even reaches it. Which makes it definitely a special one, and it is also the second most popular BFDIA post comeback episode beyond other than the comeback itself. So this episode definitely deserves a good old discussion from me. Now, one of the biggest things that this episode has probably got going for it, that has made it as popular as it is just long. It's just a very lengthy little episode, like. YouTube loves watch time. YouTube is a big fan of the watch time. So when we have an episode like this, that's a good episode, right? So it has to be a good episode. That way it'll pull in the people. At the same time, it has to be a fun episode. That way, you can stay the younger audience, and also the audience that maybe doesn't necessarily understand exactly what they're getting into, can watch it, see some jokes, go like, okay, haha, and that way they keep it tuned. But it has to be good and long, and boom, you have got yourself a ticket for success, and also potentially rewatchability, which I think that this episode is quite rewatchable. There's a lot of visual gags. There's a lot of, like, for example, even musical elements in this thing as well. So I think with that, it ends up being quite solid and quite good at its job. All right. So this episode also is probably big because of the ending portion. So honestly, I have heard a lot of people make this little point out, is that when they're doing the BFDI and II tour, right? When they're doing the BFDI and II tour, what they tend to do is they try to make a wow episode because usually in a BFDI and I tour you have a live screening of an episode, I believe, from both sides usually, but I mean it depends, if one side is busy or not, but in general, at least BFDI usually tends to try to have a screening live right there on the stage so that you can see it, right? Which means that we end up having this type of like situation where you want to make a wow episode, right? Like you don't want to do a 15-minute roughly filler episode, kind of like the last one, with fire and agility and stuff. Even though it's cool, it's not exactly what it's not going to be a wow factor, right? Like an episode like this, it gives off wow factor vibes because it's so big. And it's like so lengthy and there's so much to it, right? Which ends up doing that. So that is presumably what I think of this. Now, we start off here with the locker of losers debating themselves quite a bit as they have, their own debating. In a way, I enjoy this as well because it does give. It does give like the teapot contestants something to do, especially for like it gives the teapot and BFB people something to do, something to see, because especially for a while, a lot of them have been eliminated from teapot by now, right? BFB was a long time ago. The voice actors, they can do lines, like they're capable of doing extra lines. They'll do it. So I don't think they mind. So it's nice to have a little bit of a way here for these new, like, to get some more screen time for the fellas here, and have them also be more acquainted with the environment, of course, because, like, even in the last episode, we ended up having that type of segregation. Oh, you cannot talk to us. You weren't even there. So at least like it overall gets more interactions between all the news. So that when we reach BFB and everything does feel so like united a little bit, almost, you can more properly calculate everything. Right. So I like what they're doing, even though is it forced? Nah, a little bit, but in general, it's nice. I mean, a lot of stuff in BFDIA is forced in the sense that they want it to happen, right? A lot of stuff is like, oh yeah, they want this to happen. It's like, yes, that's true, they do, but like then we end up having what do we end up having? That cake of steak. Oh yeah, new cake of steak theme, by the way. With the Davids, because I'm not mistaken, the last is it David? Yeah, the Davids. Because if I'm not mistaken, in the last cake of steak theme, the TV was like, I think I'll give up. So that's fair. Look, Lewis has been a gag that we have pretty much done by now. Like Lewis died like 5 episodes ago, or whatever. Like it's been a while since Lewis was actually a character. So having the cake and steaks intro still be that felt a little bit obsolete. So having a new cake and steak intro is nice, and again, it'll be exciting, for the meetup. But yeah, we end up having buggies get translated as well. We have our recommended characters, of course. Look at all the recommended characters. Look at all the audience. Look at all of them. And then like within the recommended characters, just free smart themselves who are just observing the elimination from afar. The prize ends up going to Pin by over 10,000. In this case, it was one of those situations where the prize ended up being kind of the more of a clear cut part, because it's like you could have given it to Coiny realistically, because of course Coiny was the one doing so much of the effort, but Pin was the one who was treated unfairly, right? Who is trying to get themselves back, right, and make fair points, and you get a lot of sympathy. You also got a lot of sympathy for tennis ball as well, because of that, and golf ball stealing the invention. Well, but it's mine, right? But it's like that's not how tennis ball speak. How does tennis ball speak? Hold on, no, wait, this isn't how tennis ball speak. How does wait? I built an oil reactor. No, that's not what that's. I'm not. I'm sorry. That's not a best. That's not. I mean, I have voice acted. I do voice that, but as like us mimicking the tennis ball voice, that might not be my strong suit. So Pin ends up happening to spin the wheel, and it just so happens that obviously the wheel lands on regain your face, your size, and a state-of-the-art mech suit, because I don't know. Look, to be fair, I would say that's the best possible thing that the wheel could have. However, one of the options is win BFDIA. So you know what? Fair enough. I mean, Coin definitely rigs it, but like, yeah, we should have landed on win BFDI. That would have been better. No. But yeah, Coiny ends up getting a pin back through the system. Yet again, this wheel is a very much so a narrative plot element to how something be kind of convenient. But yet again, this is the way that BFDIA is. It's the way that it always has been. We accept it and we keep it moving, okay? When something extremely convenient happens, that's just how it's supposed to be, alright? So, Pin ends up having a new mech suit. So, this mech suit apparently has it's pretty good. It clings on to walls. It is the main form that Pin ends up having. I knew about Pin having this form, obviously, right? Like, you just see it, okay? Like, when you're in the object show community, you just see it. Like, you just see things from time to time. And Pin, and of course, Modern BFDI, I do see it. And the obvious things are the characters that have design changes. Pin is the most obvious one. So, alright, Pin has this mech suit. Interesting about this mech suit, it apparently has to be attached at all times for Pin to be able to move, which means that we're going to need a lot of extension cables if Pin wants to make it very far. Thankfully, Courtney ordered like 2,763, so that's all cool. Haha, it's the number. OMG, isn't that so epic? Then eventually, as Smart tries to run away before Pin gets their revenge on them or whatever, we end up having the plan. We end up activating a plan to eliminate Spongy. So the plan is to eliminate Spongy, right? So no, because if we eliminate Spongy, they'll land back and kill the host, because that's the joke, right? The Spongy always lands on the host and murders them. So then in the meantime, they're trying to figure out how to get the bugs while getting a bunch of instruments as the final one safe. And then our final two ends up being Gothball and Balmy, which I was not expecting, I must say. I tried to, if I'm not mistaken, yeah, I had to guess Nickel, and Nickel did end up getting roughly around that area, but there's one thing that I kind of highly misgrasped about this voting ceremony, is that Golball was slowly but surely becoming not necessarily more tyrannical, but just a little bit more unfair, right? In the way that, like, tennis ball and golf ball has this kind of camaraderie to the way that they, help each other, right? And do stuff together and all that stuff. However, even though they have this camaraderie, slowly but surely in the past few episodes, you started to see the inklings come in of golf ball being like, ha, this is my invention. And you saw that, like, when tennis ball was alone, tennis ball was happier. Because they could actually focus on inventions and building stuff, right? And Gobble started to take credit for them and all that stuff, and it's like, this is unfair. Eliminate Gobble, which I had not actually calculated. So you know what? Okay, yeah, we can do that. That's fair. That's fair enough. We can do that. But before they actually get eliminated, they end up getting a lot of sugar on, so that the bugs end up getting all crushed, which means that the host is dead. So yet again, we call the phone. The first contact ends up being apparently Barfbag ends up being the contact. So Spongy proceeds to die, and then the LOL ends up being the host of the show and of the season. All right, so we end up taking the usage mainly Barbag, I guess. But it was very close. Golball gets eliminated by 300 votes over Balmy, who ends up only having 300 more than both Fries and Nickel. So yeah, they were very close by. That is kind of crazy. I'm not gonna lie. Golball gets firmly golf clubbed outwards into the WTF, which, by the way, for some reason, Fiery Gelatin and the gang are back in. I guess they're just trying to be like, oh, no, we did not go out. We did not go out, which is interesting. And Golfball is there. Come on, Golfball, you're smart enough to know that you can just walk out of the WTF, okay? I mean, they'll probably just tell you. Again, there's nothing going on in Fiery and Gelatin's brains. Those are like, there's nothing. There are zero thoughts that make any sense in those. So I love them. They're great characters, but it's just freaking. such a thing. Eventually, we spin the challenge, which ends up being to I don't know what what is the challenge. I don't know what challenge. I forget the challenge is. Well, I know what the challenge is, but I don't. I want to see the wheel land on it, so that's specific how the wheel worded it. But there's actually the scene with Panflute coming back, and then Panflute dies, and then we end up murdering Panflute, so that we have the memorial still be accurate. Which, yet again, I appreciate. Not because I want to see Panflute die. I mean, I enjoy Panflute staying there, but it's kind of one of those things where when you have a character that you specifically put in a role as a guest, it ends up being a little bit weird because it's like, hold on, like this is a little bit more awkward, right? Because it's like, hold on, we had this one special situation where we had this guest here, acting as this character. However, now we don't have it, which means that we need to sort of get rid of them so that we don't need this, right? So they did this, for example, by having, if I'm not mistaken, the pineapple was voiced by like Tom Scott and stuff die. And now they need to have Panflute die, so we didn't need to commission Kevin MacLeod every single time because that's just the guy that's not a voice actor. That's a guess. Like, please. So yeah, I see why they do it every time, and it makes sense. We have ourselves an intro. By the way, did we have an intro in the last episode? I was thinking about this when I saw this intro, and I was like, wait, hold on. Did we even have an intro in the last episode? I feel like we skipped an intro. I swear we skipped the intro in BFDIA 13. I think we did, because I don't know when it would have played, because we didn't really have the competition. Get to the bunk bed. That is the challenge hosted by everybody at the LRO. The locker of losers is the competition. All right, they are the host, and pretty much, basically, the challenge ends up being, um, basically each island that was ordered that one time, that other episode, ends up being the proper for a stage of the challenge. The bunk bed is at the very, very top of the very, very last island. However, you have to get from island to island with a certain items that are within the island that you can earn by doing a challenge on the island. Which means that you'll get something which will allow you to progress to the next island. All right. Every pair has to make it to the bunk bed except for the last pair, which will go on a one-on-one elimination battle. Okay, that is what is going on in this challenge. This is one of those episodes that, like, this challenge is one of those ones that's like super complicated almost on accident. This is just kind of what happens when you write an extremely long challenge. If you write an extremely long challenge, sometimes you will get you'll just get an extremely long situation. Like, it'll just take a while. And this episode is one of those things where the challenge is really, it's really long, so you kind of got to do it. It's the problem that they faced in BFDA 5 back in the day, right? Where they had a challenge to get to Yo-Yo Land that's 2,763 miles away. However, there was literally no excuse to why or how they would ever get there, not in an excruciatingly long amount of time. So they just had to write 1 billion miles, because if you enter the forest, you will die. So they just literally had to, like, put themselves in the situation, because otherwise it didn't work, right? So that's why BFD 5 ends up taking as long as it unbelievably does, because it takes so long for any team to not just immediately flop. And this challenge is somewhat on the same boat. However, this time we can actually have long episodes, which is, quite nice. Our pairings ends up being, if I'm not mistaken, let me check. End up being Book. So the free smarters end up divided into two: Book and Ruby as the alive free smarters, and the forming a team, and then the other team ends up being Needle and which is the free smart alternate, and then Pencil, which is a free smarter, however, is dead because they got bitten by the bugs. Fries and Bommy, the digging duo, end up going in together. Fries, sort of carrying Bommy through in a way. Bommy doesn't want to be carried, but Fries just does it anyways. Fries tries to carry Bommy throughout the competition. Fries and Goppo, no, sorry, Fries and Goppo. Fries and Gopal. I just said two names that is not what I wanted to say. Nickel and Tennis Ball. Oh my god. Nickel and Tennis Ball form the other team as Tennis Ball tries to find the best next thing. And then obviously Coiny ends up teaming up with the newly found pin. Right? So they all end up going to eventually the first island, which is to fill these jetpacks with fuel and use them to fly to the next island. So there's no actual prize you can necessarily earn. It's just a very mild puzzle, right? How do you fuel up a donut jetpack? How do you fuel up a donut jetpack? Well, you put the donut fuel within it. Of course. Okay. That makes sense, which is, the jelly, which donut is made out of, and the island, therefore, is also made out of. So that all makes sense. To be fair to Tennis Ball and Nickel, they end up doing okay amounts of they end up doing pretty well. Again, Tennis Ball definitely carries Nickel quite a bit, and it keeps a little bit of my opinion of like Tennis Ball. No, of like Nickel kind of currently doesn't give me vibes of a contestant that's gonna go far, because it's like, well, everybody else feels so like, coordinated and stuff, right? I'm not getting vibes, a lot of them, from Nickel. Nickel kind of feels like kind of a lone wolf equation. Like, you end up teaming with somebody or another here for this challenge and for this challenge, but they're not like long lasting friendship that Nickel's trying to make. So it just ends up that I don't think Nico's exactly making it too far, in my opinion. I think Nico's one of the next to go. I don't think Nico's making it too far, all right? But I guess we'll have to eventually see. And then yet again, Fries lures in Balmy up there. They end up solving the idea of flying over to the jetpack, and if I'm not mistaken, oh yeah, then they order the extension cables. Um, Nico ends up having to sucks up the pollution so that the jetpack successfully fly, which it does work. However, it eventually bites them in the long run for screwing up. Balmy ends up having a sugar crash like about a million times, so Fries ends up having a bit of a complicated situation. Then we have the teams that make it to the second one. Oh yeah, by the way, yeah, you can't fall too far behind. This game has like I forgot. This game has like battle royale mechanics. If you go too far down, Evil Leaf is just gonna get you. I don't know if they planned that for that to happen, but they did. That is a thing that happens as well. So okay, yeah, that makes sense. Then we have ourselves the extension cables, which I would have thought would have been a more annoying thing, but I'm gonna be honest. After a little bit, we kind of forgot that the cable stuff wasn't was a thing, and we kind of forgot about it, to be honest, because it's like we just spent nearly the like I think Coiny swapped it out once when it like could make it to like the size of half an island. Then we swapped it out once, and now we could suddenly pretty much make like 3 islands. It's worth. And then we didn't see that be a problem for the rest of the episode, which does feel like we kind of forgot about that part, to be honest. The second island is the Dora Island. The Dora Island, well, Dora tries to eat the island. It doesn't work because they're in the locker of losers. However, they decide to make that the challenge. The challenge is to eat an island and feel my way. And then they'll unlock the next segment. So they give it a couple of attempts. Oh yeah, I freaking forgot. There's so much happened. Book and Ruby end up falling down due to the pollution, and then they end up flopping. Then, however, right as that they're about to get it, Pin and Coiny steal it in an epic moment that's gonna make the crowd go wow at the meetup. I'm so sorry. I'm gonna keep mentioning, but eventually we end up having Book and Ruby's end up giving up, so that's fair. I still don't know how Ruby works. I still don't know if Ruby is one person acting is one person, but like the facade is swapped, or if there is actually the new gem every time. Either way, they act the same as Ruby. It doesn't matter. It's just an it's just, it's an interesting little thing. How does it work? How does it work? I wanna know how the thing works, because it'd be cool to have that knowledge. Okay. Then yet again, we end up struggling here with the sugary fry. Bommy immediately eats the island and ends up going up there first, just swimming up. Then Tennis Ball cooks the island, whatever that means. Nico tries to eat it, but just cannot eat it because they have all the pollution in their mouth. So it ends up being quite a little bit of a problem. Now to reach the island with the anti-poison, Pencil ends up recovering and figures out the challenge. So good job, Pencil, on eating an island. And then we have our next island, which is one from Teardrop. I like Teardrop. Dude, I really Teardrop as a character is so good. The way the Teardrop has to kind of gesture and stuff. I must say that I like the Teardrop Island. First of all, it just looks aesthetically very pleasing, in the way that it's so watery. Kind of looks like a haven of some kind. It kind of has that vibe to it. So in the Teardrop Island, you have the various Teardrop family members, which are just insert drink here, insert liquid here, drop. All right, they don't have different. It's a milk drop. It's a blood drop. It's a other thing. It's the blood drop. I like a blood drop, like from the other show I watched. It's the teardrop. Is there a water drop that looks exactly the same as the teardrop? Then I'm curious. Oil drop probably exists. Like a bunch of other characters. So they're getting yapped at. They're getting absolutely yapped at by the other side. Getting absolutely yapped at by random members, and they don't like that because, of course, they're silent. All of them are silent, which is interesting. That's just the species. So the idea is to have them shut up, which Bommy obviously understand. Bommy is what is going on? Bommy understanding buggies was like, okay, sure, but Bommy's specialty is just understanding. Mommy is goated at this. I don't know who was like, yo, Bommy, you're gonna understand everything. All right, but the Bommy just does. So they understand teardropian, I guess, as well. So the chatterboxes, as they say, shut up. Pencil and Needle end up helping out. The two given up ones, so they're not 100% gone. Because I mean, that would have been hilariously anticlimactic. That would have been literally it. That would have been a way to end the episode early, I guess, if they really wanted to. Because remember, only the bottom place team goes up for elimination, which means that if one team had just given up, then that would have literally been it at that moment. I was like, wait, nah, something's happening, right? Because they can't just be last because there's only one team up free, and then it becomes boring, right? So. Yeah. Eventually, we try to brush the teeth. Fries and Bommy try desperately to get Whistle to stop talking, but they don't. Yet again, I am appreciative of seeing BFDIA with other characters, other people, right, around town, doing their own, doing stuff, doing things. And just in general, seeing more people in society, which is something that BFDIA excels, especially in Teapot. In Teapot, that just never happens. I'm trying to think about it. Does that ever happen in Teapot? In Teapot, do we actually see characters that aren't the main cast? And we don't. It's just not a thing that happens over there. In BFB it happens a couple times, and I know a lot of people didn't like it when random recommended character joined, even though it's fine, bro. What are you doing? But yeah, in this case, BFDI does it a lot, and I enjoy it quite a lot. Yet again, Ruby has swapped the color. Dora's like, yeah, I mean, I guess you ate it, so that's fair. Good job, Sapphire. Then we end up having trying to brush the teeth. It's kind of become complicated because there was a lot of pollution. Did you know? Then yet again we end up having how did we do it? Oh yeah, majority of the people just end up fucking kicking the other fella or pushing them off the island. So yeah, coffee drop. Oh yeah, coffee drop. So then they give them, depending on the team, the various devices to actually get up there, such as a microphone and a helium tank. The helium tank Bubble uses, which, oh yeah, they revived Bubble, by the way, because they can. Hey, at the end of the day, I'm not necessarily a big fan of using the reasoning because we can when I am actively doing a review analysis discussion. I'm not a big fan of calling it a review, even though that's technically what it is. analysis of the show, right? I'm not necessarily a big fan of doing that, but at the same time, is uh, like the BFDIA. A lot of the reasonings is why does why does X character do Y thing? Well, it's because they wanted to. There's no additional reason. They just wanted to see Bubble, and if they can see Bubble for some reason, nobody judges them on it. I was like, oh, okay, Bubble's here, okay. Which I mean, fair enough, I guess. And then eventually using the new brush, they end up brushing the teeth of Nico, and then Nico ends up eating the island, which means that they're safe. So they end up going up there. Whistle is finally gone, and then we end up having a couple of things. Oh yeah, Milk Drop eventually says thanks to Pin for accidentally shutting them up by running them over, which is nice. What does the match's factor say? Rocket's helium, Springy's shoes, and Icarus's wings do not function in this musty factory air. Okay, that's nice. Nice, bro, they got the technicality on there. They already got this. They don't need me. They don't need me, bro. They already got this. They already got this technicality solving. Because I was gonna go like, oh, why couldn't you fly to the top? Okay, there we go. I mean, okay. At the same time, I can make the you could have freaking flown around it, right? But no, whatever. Then we end up having the match section. So the match section needs to have a raft ride because we have a very volcano-y, because some matchstick factories to put to light the matches, right? There's a very volcano-y section, it's a lava section, right? You have to build a raft that's going to survive in the lava, so that way you can rise up to the next section. It's relatively simple. This section is like not really that complicated, to be honest. They, for some reason, Match and Pencil don't really want to talk. Coiny and Pin are trying to solve something. They're kind of struggling. In the meantime, the Fry team, they can't even get to the island because they're kind of just having they're majorly the dealing with Nickel and Tennis Ball, which they end up murdering one by one, and then however eventually accidentally two teams end up helping Fries. They end up kind of helping each other out by making each other bounce up to the top. So Fries end up at the floor. The floor below is Nickel and the Tennis Ball. So yeah. Eventually, Match apparently says that there's an abandoned shipwreck. There's a thing it's hidden near an abandoned shipwreck. So it's like, okay, all right, then they will go check that. So they're going back down. Where, of course, what's the price for going back down? That's right. It's Evil Leafy. Evil Leafy's down there, so they end up having major troubles doing that. Yet again, it's another intense little scene. It's like, oh, will they survive, Evil Leafy, for the meetup? Okay. And then we end up having some interesting things. I like it. To be fair, they do catch the drift of Teardrop relatively quickly. To be honest, good job, Nico, on understanding it. They do it in record amounts of time, and then Ball Job gives them wings, which eventually gets them up there. So that's fair enough. The first team to eventually have made a raft that ends up being, to have made no. So Pin and Coiny eventually make a raft through a lot of hard work. Fries ends up stealing it because that's just what they do. And then eventually Bommy has the idea of taking a part of the raft and throwing it down there to Pin and Coiny so that they can help because, they're roll benchers. So they both will be getting up there. And remember, it's not like the first team. Like, honestly, it's you could say, oh, but they're too keen on their alliance and shit. But, fair. In this case, it's 100% fair because we have this whole scenario, we have this whole situation, right, where the teams who only the bottom team ends up being saved. Yeah, help your friends out. Help your friend do a while, especially because you'll probably be returning to your regular teams next time. So you want somebody from another team eliminated. Yeah, okay, that all makes sense. Then they all check different sections of the shipyard except Bubble, who was scared for surprisingly valid reasons. And then three teams end up making it to the top, which is Puffball's Island. So how does Puffball's Island work? Puffball's Island ends up being a very intense little thing, to be honest. You have to serenade. No, that is not the word. That's a different thing. You don't serenade Puffball. No, you have to sing a lullaby to Puffball. If Puffball enjoys your lullaby, pretty much it has to be decent to any type of extent and not obnoxious, you will survive. Your microphone immediately gets the Puffball effect added to it, so that's fair. Balmy ends up getting failing, Fries ends up failing, so those two end up not exactly going great. Pin ends up failing, so yeah, I mean they're just doing quite bad because it's like Fries is way too honest to ever lie. Balmy and Pin, like the problem that Balmy and Pin are doing is that they are pretty much just they sing about themselves, you know. Like they're singing about themselves, which kind of makes it annoying. I mean, okay, you can debate that they're just not singing well, but the main thing is that they're just kind of not. They're singing about themselves, and it's like it's egotistical. Like, yo, what the hell do I want to listen to fucking Bommy song? I don't care. I just don't know what I am. This is not what I'm doing. Right, so that's kind of what is going on in that perspective. So is that okay? Yep, that's yeah, you know, all fair. So yeah, then eventually, yeah, they end up all escaping Evil Leafy down there. And then they all get sent down a hatch that gets them outwards, except Book, which doesn't make it in time. And then Book eventually takes in and has an intense moment. And it's like, oh, they did a sacrifice. It's like, OMG. But eventually they just survive somehow through Evil Leafy. Neither ends up at least postponing Evil Leafy for a quick moment. And yeah, for some reason, Pin decides to sing the exact same song again. Nickel ends up singing a decent song. It's barely there. You know, it's barely there. Nickel clutched up. The tennis ball was, you know, a little bit too tactical for the taste, but they ended up getting to they ended up getting through it, which is quite nice. Then we also have the second team, which is oh yeah, Fries wants to sing the exact same song. I don't, bro. These people have to say okay in the same way. They say okay, yeah, I understand that there's a grudge, you want to be annoying or whatever, but it's like hold on, your song fails, all right? Okay, cool. Song failed. It wasn't good. It was bad. All right, got it. But like, did you not hear that your song was bad? What are you doing? Why are you literally going back and singing the same song again? If Fries wants to sing a diss at Papa, then at least you gotta sing a different diss than the previous one at Papa. You know, like what the hell? But eventually they clutch up and end up surviving, even though it wasn't exactly great. I like how they sleep to their own sleep music. So they end up in second place. Corny wants to try to sing, however, pointy, 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 my pointy, sharp and pointy. So yeah, and eventually Pencil and the Match end up going to sing, and then Needle actually comes by with an epic song, an actual singing capability. Even Pencil is like, OMG, that's kind of crazy. So yeah, although I will admit, probably people were disappointed. I'm not gonna lie, that Pencil didn't do the "Let Me Win," yeah. Because you know that's the song. No, that's the song. We should in a way missed opportunity. Okay, missed opportunity. Look, BFDIA is references galore. All right, and you're telling me we didn't do that? Like, come on, bro. But we got a lovely little piece here from Nito, which I will not be singing, because I I do not have the correct needle pitch. Like I can do this, but not much higher. That's already hurts. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But like it's not great, you know? Because I can do like that, the sharp voice, but low sharp voice, like high sharp voice. Like, don't call me needy. Like you see, you just lose it. I mean, my voice is also kind of sore because I've been talking for 40 minutes, in a row. Yeah, these are recorded in a row, by the way. Did you notice? And then yeah, they eventually end up going to sleep. And then we have the final one. Ruby ends up taking the idea of the fact that they recorded the Pointy song. Pin is super mad at Free Smart for doing that. Remember, the song was bad though, but thankfully the microphone has an auto-tune function, which gets it decent enough. And then Pin gets so pissed, like so unbelievably pissed, that they end up electricizing. We have unnecessary 3D. Let's fucking go. We love overly freaking overpowered 3D that nobody needs. Is BFDI staple. In the same way, nobody needs it, but it's such a staple that everybody needs it. You know, we haven't had it for a couple of episodes, but of course, I gave them the benefit of the pass, right? Because they got through. They had still the 3D. They just had stuff like the highway with the variants of like all the rubies together. It's like, okay, sure, that's fine. You know, like sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do, right? Then, of course, we get to see the full pathway of the wire, which, as you can see, it's a pretty long wire. I mean, I understand it's extension cables, but like, that's one extension cable that ends up zapping them off a pin from the sky, ends up absolutely going, just being like, you're done. I have had enough of you bullshitting us forever and forever. You will go up for elimination. And indeed, they are up for elimination. Which means that Book and Ruby are the two contestants UFE. Who gets eliminated out of these two? Genuinely, I cannot tell you. I think it's Book. Especially because of course, you do a little bit have to factor in Teapot into the equation, right? Because, well, of course, Teapot doesn't happen in this timeline. The viewers have probably seen it. And Book is happening in Teapot, and I feel like not a lot. I feel like people don't really like Book that much in Teapot, as far as I'm aware. So I think Book both gets eliminated for that. People like Ruby, and Ruby isn't over there. So if you want people to see Ruby, then they're definitely going to be there. And Ruby's got the cool thing going on with the sister still. So I think it's overall just got more going on than Book. So in my opinion, Ruby should say. But yeah. We also have Puppo flying out of the eliminated stuff. Interesting enough, I don't think I actually see the Panflute credit. No, we do. Oh, no, never mind. I was wondering, because if Kevin MacLeod was actually credited, like if somebody else had replaced Kevin MacLeod's voice as Panflute. No, Panflute is there. But yet again, kill off the character so we can get him out of there. Fair enough. Makes sense. All right. We have covered BFDA 14 well and truly. It's one of the biggest of the show episodes of modern times. You absolutely got to talk about it. BFDI 15 is titled Spore Day. Let's watch it. Hello, I have just watched BFDIA 15 Spore Day. So, we have quite a little episode for sure. Because we end up having quite a situation. So we end up having firstly some funny doings international. I like how there's the freaking specifically an agency for looking at blockies of funny doings, which of course sets itself to BFDIA. This episode overall, right? Is very nice. You know, one of the things that BFDIA like does well is when you have so many of these little details like that, right? And so many of these things, it gives off passion, you know, in a way that a lot of other stuff doesn't, right? This show just emits, even if you don't necessarily understand it, even if you're not the biggest fan of it, it's like this show gives you passion, you know, because it's like you can see from the little details and stuff that they're writing what they're passionate about. They're writing specifics, and it's just cool, you know, like it's just cool, bro. Um, but anyways, we have a battery pack for pin now because we decided that the cable was going to be too annoying of a thing. And you know what? I agree. Like, if you think about what this challenge turns out to be, if we had a cable, I don't think that would have functioned under any circumstance at all. You know, I literally, I cannot even imagine what that would mean. You know, like what? So okay, yeah, fair enough. Um, then we end up going towards our cake at stake ceremony between freaking between Book and Ruby. I must admit that the swaps seem to now reveal themselves, which is interesting how for the first time they properly revealed themselves right here in BFDI 15. Because if you think about it, like they didn't ever officially be like, oh yeah, I'm Ruby's sister before like right now, which means that this is like the first time that they properly appeared, right? So I mean, okay then, that's fair enough. Now that they probably like appear like publicly, like this is their face, right? But then we get our cake at stake ceremony where we have the droplet cake. Teardrop approves of this, surprisingly enough. I guess it has. Do you approve? I guess that's interesting. It's kind of like would donut like donuts, would fries like fries, right? It's one of those classic questions. Would Teardrop be okay with this? I'm surprised that Teardrop seems to be relatively okay with this, but I mean, I guess everybody has Teardrop, so it's not like that she can do much about it, from a hands-on level. Right, so it's like, yep. I mean, y'all can do it. That y'all can do it, right? Like, there's nothing she can stop it. It's not a willing activity, and it doesn't impact her because he's a different type of teardrop than actual teardrop. So, I guess that's fair. It's kind of like, would a pencil use a pencil, for example? Like, yes, because even though yes, a pencil is a pencil, it's kind of on a different level than a lot of other things, right? Then we have ourselves 151,000 votes. That feels high. That feels like higher than usual, I'm pretty sure we are kind of close both the likes and the dislikes. But it is also easier when there's only 2 videos rather than 6 or 8. So yeah. And we we end up reading a couple of comments. I mean, I think we're using the Google form nowadays to actually vote. So it's nice to have some people have some random comments to get read out. It gives off the correct vibe, especially when you consider like again, this is a thing in original BFDI. BFDI used to read comments, and eventually they stopped doing it because it was impossible to cover comments at a decent enough level where it doesn't just seem like random bias. But hey, let's do it. Why not? Apparently, horrifying sludge cries glitter. So fair enough. Then we also have some interesting things. We also have a bunch of characters talk. Again, look, I the thing about the LOS is just I find funny. Like it's such an excuse to have the other VAs have some work to do. So it's like, oh, Fiery Junior hasn't had to do anything in about like 7 months. Let's get him back. Let's get Fiery Junior some lines. Getting some characters, some other lines. It's like who's talking on the LOL kind of doesn't matter that much usually. It's kind of random. Not really in this episode. And this episode actually makes a decent amount of sense, but it's random in a lot of situations. To be honest, so then we end up having the hit quote. I'm gonna voting Ruby because she's made Pin and Coiny almost lost, and I hate Steeler. Which yeah, that's just the truest thing anybody's ever said. I mean, I should start doing analysis of that caliber. But yeah, I also hate Steeler. But it turns out that I actually get the votes hella wrong. I just get it wrong, incorrect. I thought that Book was getting eliminated, Ruby was getting eliminated. Maybe people thought that Ruby was a little bit annoying. I think there's one thing that I didn't account for that is the reason, in my opinion, why probably Ruby got eliminated. But the one thing that I didn't account for is that Ruby was the one who did steal the song. Like Ruby stole the song in terms of recording with the microphone and then eventually pressing the auto tune to make their team like playing it. Like it was Ruby's idea. That is the thing that I didn't catch. I think in a one-on-one situation, I kind of think that Book's worse than Ruby, but yeah, when you consider the aspect of the challenge, which I hadn't originally considered, then okay, yep, I concede. Ruby probably makes more sense as the meaner pick to vote out. This one I did not calculate properly, which is unfortunate for me. I will take the L on this one, but yeah, Book is no, Ruby is gone, still with more likes than dislikes, by the way, which is still such an interesting thing about the voting things. Like, if you think about, like, there's 90,000, like, in total, it's like only 50,000 ish votes cast, but dislikes cast, but there's like just 60,000 likes on on book alone, which is such an interesting thing on the mental, because it's like it's weird, how it's weird because people aren't used to disliking videos now, especially now that they're hidden, right? Where dislikes are properly hidden, and it's like this system ends up causing quite a lot of this stuff, because it's like, I don't know, it's like when you look at it, you should obviously care about who you're disliking more than who you're liking, because who you're liking gives them a whatever prize. But like, I mean, I mean, to be fair to BFDIA, they have managed to make the prizes whatever useful, but other than that, it's like in general, right, the dislike and to be more important because the character gets out, so you think the videos would have more dislikes than they would likes. However, in this case, this ends up not being true. There's way more total likes than total dislikes, just because people are used to liking, which is, but it's it's a very interesting little detail. God damn you, YouTube! Why did you freaking hide this side, bro? What are you doing? But I think even back in the day, there were more total likes than there were dislikes. So yeah. Then eventually the Ruby sisters get all flung away. And then we have the prize, which ends up being your pages become century. You know what I'm gonna say? You know what I'm gonna say? At this point, the money count, right? The $1,763 billion or whatever, right? Like that money count. Someday, okay, someday, somebody better get this freaking prize. I'm telling you, it's been there like every episode. So one day, somebody better just get a fat stash of money, and that's the prize, okay? That's what someday, because it's been there for so long. I feel like it would be funny if it's like, oh my god, it actually landed on a thing that was on the wheel the entire time. Like I feel like they should write that in. In my opinion, they should write that in because that is just pretty cool. All right. So yeah. But anyways, Book's prize ends up being that their pages become sentient, which means that every picture ends up being alive. So we get to see a couple of them. My name wheel, my job roll, spinny, spinny, roly, roly. This is bars. That's a fun gag. I really like the gags of the characters within the book itself. Like that's cool. Anyways, the birdhouse of Greater Goiki apparently has the best interior design possible, and the exterior design is rather bad. But the problem is that nobody can fit because it's a birdhouse, which means that they have to actually get stuff. Or that they have the challenge ends up being to fit into the birdhouse. How do you fit into the birdhouse? Well, I don't know. You can do various things. However, the main one that ends up being resorted to is that actually fitting into the birdhouse. Nobody's gonna fit into the birdhouse just naturally, except like a super tiny character like Fiery Jr., who's introducing us the challenge. And you know what? When I saw what the challenge was, because originally I was like, oh, Fiery Jr., that's just random. But then I saw that the challenge was actually to fit inside the birdhouse because it had the superior interior design. And I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. That Fiery Jr. is introducing it, because Fiery Jr. would theoretically be one of the only characters who could actually fit in this birdhouse naturally, right? Alongside some other characters that could get in through other methods like Ice Cube and stuff. But on average, it's mainly just I don't know why is my voice dying? My voice today has like been dying. I'm very sorry. But and then eventually they form teams, and they form relatively simple teams like Free Smarter, the Woe Bunchers, and eventually just the rest. Even though Nico, yet again, can't be with the Woe Bunch, it has to be with the other sections. The problem is that they thought it was color match. Nope. It's not a color match. It's actually shape based, which nobody ended up seeing. So we have the hearts, which ends up being fries, pencil, and coiny. We end up having the stars, which is nickel, book, and pin. And then we end up having the quadrodecahedron or whatever, which is Bommy, not nickel, a needle, and a tennis ball. You know what? Yeah, I buy this. Get a relatively honest way to split the teams in a way that doesn't just force everybody to stick together, and that way we have a semblance of different character interaction. We don't just have to be with the duo. We don't just have to be with the free spot. I mean, they're with the free spot pretty much anyways, but like, At least it's a little bit of differentiation in terms of who is interacting with who. That like at this rate happens so little nowadays, you know. There's like, oh my god, bro. So yeah, we have ourselves a cool little switch up for sure. So that's all set. Anyhow, we end up having some other interesting things. I like how every team's reaction to the name is one person doesn't like it, one person's ever confused, one person likes it, one person doesn't like it, and one person is confused slash doesn't care about it. Like freaking tennis ball going, oh, that's my fourth favorite shape. What the hell is it? The quasi rhombicosidodecahedron. Huh? What the hell does the quasi mean? I'm okay. That's interesting. But they eventually end up trying a couple of tactics to try to actually fit in. But it ends up that it kind of nothing works except the tactic of using the shrink ray. The shrink ray is the only way that you're realistically going to fit in a place you can't fit. You know? That's the only way. You gotta get smaller or the thing has to get bigger. So you need a growth rate or a shrink rate. And what do? They get the shrink rate from Ruby, because Ruby earned a shrink rate, right, when the challenge no, in the prize of the like a couple of episodes ago, because Pin, remember, he tried to shrink Pin all the way down to a super small size. But here we need to do that again. So that becomes very useful, especially because Ruby doesn't have it anymore because, of course, Ruby's eliminated. So Ruby kind of has to keep hostage to it. So, all right. Then they end up coming in and going with them. Nito ends up promising that, yo, we'll be doing that. Pento yet again has never seen the acts of generosity that Nito tries. So, yeah, yet again we have Pain freaking the swinging or whatever. Then what was the idea? Oh yeah, they're getting it. But one of the things that I find very funny about BFDIA, to be honest, is how a challenge, right, an entire challenge set or location, could be the epitome of superbly difficult to do in an episode, right? Like the last episode, the challenge takes 40 minutes, right? But then that challenge takes like 40 minutes, and then we go over here and they do jump the islands in like 5 seconds, and it's so funny every time. To be honest, these are the types of gags I love. You know, I love gags that like especially for BFDIA, because like this show isn't trying to make logical sense, so it gets away with it. In a lot of like, you might hear this and think that I'm being biased against other shows. In other shows, I will call out logical fallacies, and in this one, I do. It's the problem is just the way that it is, right? Because if you want a show to be logical, then I will judge it on being logical. This show actively doesn't want to be logical, and it in fact isn't logical. So then they can take advantage of the illogicalness to create a relatively good, you know, like factor and factoid to it, right? Which is all pretty solid, pretty solid stuff, right? So yeah. But like for example, you know, BFDA 5, the entire challenge is to get to Yo-Yo Land, but now for the next episodes, getting to Yo-Yo Land is literally a piece of cake. Like they can do that on the morning. Of course, they invented a reason. It's like, oh, yo, Lewis bought the Gorky Highway, but like, still, it's kind of goofy how that is a thing that they can just do. You know, like bro, what? So. All right. Then they end up doing that. We have a little bit of random 3D when they were freaking gunning it down, but I think there might have been another moment of 3D. But they end up doing a bunch of shrink rays, and it's bro. I don't really know how to describe this episode. This is one of those episodes that's a little bit more difficult than usual to talk about. That's why I'm not talking about it too much, because it's quite very action based, right? An episode that's action based in the way that it is, because like when I'm talking about it, you know, usually I can like discuss events that happen in terms of like the individuality, right? Like I can go like, okay, this event happened, what do I think about this? But like with an action scene, it's just like there's roughly like so many events happening at the same time. And it's just kind of like there's usually not too much to say. Like, oh, yo, you kicked up and you dropped into the bucket and then you shot the laser ray, right? And it's like this episode has a lot of that. This episode has a lot of that, so it then generally ends up a little bit more difficult to discuss than usual. But yeah, we end up having a couple of tactics. A book, yes, again, is utilizing the book pages to their advantage. So far, I mean, I don't remember the last time a prize was useless. I don't remember the last time a prize wasn't actually a game-changing thing. To be honest, like there's been a while since the prize hasn't been a game-changing thing, which I appreciate that they're making the prizes useful. Because if I'm not mistaken, the first batch of episodes of BFDI, the OG ones, they weren't actually that useful. But like in this case, if you think about it, that's where majority of the votes are heading. The majority of the votes are heading towards giving them a prize when they're giving them anything. So I like the fact that the prize is usually themed thematically based on the character. Um, but not only is it thematically based on the character, it actually like helps out the challenge and the writing department. So like I think that it's rather nice when that happens, to be honest. Pencil ends up going within the internal circuitry of the board and starts messing around with it, causing Pin to not really be capable of controlling them too well. In the meantime, the other team is just been relaxing. Nico ends up having a possibly permanent design adjustment. They have like a little square gap on them now because they got shot by like one of the shrink rays or whatever and went through it. So yeah, I like the joke that book makes. They're probably worth more. It'll be I'll be interested to see if these design changes are permanent, because for some cases it is, for some cases it isn't. I think for Nico and Pin, right, because Pin's mech suit, it's not like they don't really get their limbs back as far as I'm aware. Um, so yeah, and then like I think for Nico's probably be the same. So that's what I'm what I'm guessing. Then we end up having two shrink rays. One of them is in Godball's factory, while the other one is in a random bush, which happens to exist. So yeah, then eventually everything gets shrink down, and accidentally, if I'm not mistaken, the fella that gets shrunk down is Nickel. Because no, Nickel gets blended in. No, gets shrunk down a second time by Bommy, I think, and then Tennis Ball decides to conduct an experiment with them and the random caterpillar, which, however, means that the nickel gets just stuck within the droplet, right? Which ends up becoming quite complicated. Bommy almost fits, which is a thing. Like those two almost fit. The problem is that, yeah, they can't get Tennis Ball to realistically fit. That's one of the biggest problem with the challenge. One of the biggest problem with the challenge is that it just ends up being roughly a complicated like a challenge to properly like get everybody across, right? Unless they're all on the same page. Because like if you shrink somebody, you can usually not shrink somebody else, but at the same time, it ends up a kind of like complicating stuff quite a bit. And you can kind of tell by the way that this challenge is, right? That it's like you can see it, in the way that, like, for example, in the last challenge, everybody has to make it, and therefore it's not actually that difficult to have everybody make it, right? However, in this episode, it is significantly more complex. So, like, it's just like a challenge that feels like a failure in principle, you know? Because like it's such a struggle. It's kind of like, again, BFDA 5. I think it's a good comparison for a challenge. It's like it's just kind of difficult to do a challenge like that, a challenge like this, and that only one team ever actually just manages to succeed at it, and it takes and it's a global failure. It's just a global soft lock for nearly everybody. Involved. Eventually, Tennis Ball ends up earning a growth ray as well, which they end up using on a couple of things. Very swag dodge there from Bommy. I'm not gonna lie, that was just sick. That was just very cool. I wasn't expecting it. I like how the flung freaking Ruby. I don't know which one. I have no idea which one that is. I'm gonna say it's Topaz, but I don't think it is. Ends up just kind of like continuing on and doing their thing. So and they're just becoming like gigantic in the sky, and they just keep going. So that's kind of fun. Eventually, we end up having some debates. Pencil and the Pin are debating over there in the middle. Then eventually, if I'm not mistaken, Book gets caught by the shrink ray. And then they end up going down in the water. Everybody drops down to the droplet. It ends up being a chaos down in the droplet. And then basically, they progressively just like get smaller. There's quite a lot of another BFDIA staple, looping GIF core. It's not actually a looping GIF, but it's looping GIF core, as in like it just looks like if it was a looping GIF, kind of like how the infinite driving or infinite swimming or over there, like just infinitely doing one thing until eventually something breaks the loop. That is one of the BFDIA staples in these following minutes. There's a lot of that. So basically, they eventually shrink down the house, right? To drop in. However, the problem with shrinking down the house is that the house has apparently lead paint on it, which you can't touch, which means that everybody there just immediately dies. Like the house has a permanent, like just disarray of like power. Like the literally 100% shielded. You cannot get in. You cannot touch it. A lot of people try. They get hit until eventually they get unleaded by tennis ball. So it just ends up being it's just it's chaos, right? Um, then everything eventually gets shrunk down again. Yet again, it's an infinite loop until we reach the atomic level. No, not even a molecule, an atomic. Like we're literally found the atoms, which is crazy, no? But hey, we're taking opportunity of one of the other main interests that Carrie, the writer, has. I don't know if Carrie continues writing BFDI these days. I don't think do they? I think it depends. But I'm aware this time Carrie's still writing BFDIA, and hey, we take advantage of those to proper see it. So like when you see the freaking scale of the universe, which is one of the other big things from the era, it's like it's just cool because you get to see that type of nerdy knowledge about stuff play through in BFDIA in a way that you wouldn't. It's like who would? Because the only way to think about this concept is to know and be passionate about it. Like it's one of those concepts where it's like I feel like you cannot come up with this challenge with what happens in this episode realistically without like just having knowledge. It's like, oh, if you pluck the things out, oh yeah, sure, it's gold now. Like it's I mean, I don't think that's how it works, but like it's interesting like how that is like just to conceptualize a challenge like that, you have to be passionate, and that's I think why this episode kind of emits passion throughout it quite a lot. So yeah, I am absolutely a big fan. They end up trying to neutralize the lead, quote unquote. So it's quite funny. Everybody's dead pose from lead is absolutely hilarious. So they look like freaking like the shocked poses in like those like early black and white Disney style cartoons, like the Mickey Mouse ones from back in the day. Yeah, like those. It was like, oh, like it's like if one of those did a YouTuber thumbnail, did a Mr. Beast thumbnail. Today we will be getting lead poison. So yeah, it's great. And then we end up having eventually we have another cool scene of everybody plucking the neutrons and stuff, and then for somehow the people from outside are managing to look in, but yeah, the hearts eventually manage to get in. We have like, to be fair, I am actually quite an enjoyer of the troll that we do with Pin there. Of we're thinking, oh, is Pin gonna somehow electricize again? Because I feel like you could feel like I'm like, to be honest, it kind of got me. I was like, wait, are we really gonna do the same exact joke like way again? But no, we're not. Yeah, the hearts are safe. Everybody else, it's up for elimination. Nickel, Needle, Pin, Bommy, Book, and Tennis Ball. Most likely gets the prize. Most dislikes gets the elimination. This is a complex one. This is a complex one because there's quite a lot that's going on. In my opinion, in this, who gets out here? Pin doesn't. Does Pin? No. That's where? No. No. Okay, I'm gonna say Tennis Ball gets the prize because Tennis Ball was kind of the reason why a lot of that stuff happened. Alright, the reason why a lot of that stuff happened. So I think Tennis Ball gets the prize in this case. Okay, it's kind of it feels like an episode for them in my opinion. Okay, so we do that, and then for the elimination, Book and Pin were arguing, but Book was cool because of the prize. Needle did pretty well. Balmy just in general didn't do that much. And they're not that well liked. But Nico I thought was cool because of the change. So you can either blame Pin for being quote unquote mean a little bit, or you can eliminate Balmy for not being that interesting. It's one of the two. I'm gonna say Dude, does Pin get out? There's no way Pin gets out. Really? There's no way we have this Pin. Like, I'm gonna say Bomby. I have to say Bomby because I don't think that Pin. There's no way that Pin would possibly get out. I'm just thinking for an extra reason, for like an extra capital reason, because like I have seen the Pin so much. In the past, in like just media in the past few days, it's like there's no way that Pin just got 2 episodes of this and then go ow, and maybe appeared in 1 or 2 like a bonus episode. Like nah, there is no way. I think Bomby's probably out in this case, which sucks because I like Bomby, but they aren't writing Bomby in my opinion too well right now. Like they're kind of writing Bomby as just what if fries, but understood, but polyglot, right? Like it's basically just that. So okay then. We find out, by the way, that the interior design ends up just being like a generic office place. We have that. We have some like game console thing, I think, that from BFDI original, or BFDI original, from old BFDI. I think it's like some 8 screen thing. I swear that was one of the. I swear that was a thing, bro, but I don't really remember it that well. And I do also enjoy the factoid of having coming in from like the screen, like from real life, the way that Michael dropped on this episode was pretty solid. Shout out to Benjamin Cross for the subtitles of BFDIA 15. And yeah, that episode was pretty cool. Yet again, I felt the passion of that episode a lot. That's the main thing I've got to say about that episode. I could feel naturally just the passion that gets emitted from that episode. There's just a lot of it, like it just feels like this is a topic about something that we're knowledgeable about. We're taking advantage of that knowledge to have fun with the concept, because we know enough about it to be capable of spinning it, right, without looking inaccurate. So yeah, I enjoyed it. It was pretty nice. The next episode that we're going to be taking a look at is going to be, let me give it a quick check because I didn't have it up. BFDI 16. So BFDI 16, the first one released under a year ago, so we're starting to reach if the new year. We haven't reached the new year, but we're still in 2024. BFDI 16 was 2024. BFDI 16 is titled Respect to the Wicked. Let's watch it. Okay, I have just finished watching BFDA 16, Respect to the Wicked. So we start off here, unfortunately, for me, the LOL, the thing, that I've been saying. It's pretty cool. I know they're getting some VAs, some extra lines and stuff, right? And we're switching it up a little bit, having each character host it, and it's kind of thematic. Nope, balloon. Nope, who needs them? Who needs them? Freaking handcuff literally all of them. Not handcuffed, like shut them with tape and shit. Like literally everything, one of them gone, not there anymore. Okay, then I guess we need to, of course, at the beginning first try to figure everybody else out. But it's freaking like black hole just has tape floating around them as if that works. Which I mean, I'm 99% sure which it wouldn't, because that's not how that works. But I think black hole probably just vibes with it. Black hole is probably just like goes around with the concept. A couple characters are a little bit more harshly taped up than others, like Puppo, who's like completely taped down to the ground. Tree is like sleeping directly. I don't even know what's going on there, but a teardrop, of course, can actually like freaking not talk, right? Just in general. So they have the handcuffed arms instead. For example, what else? What else is there that's a little bit good? Yeah, TV screen is all taped up. Fiery Junior, you can't put tape over Fiery Junior's mouth because it won't work. It's fire, it'll burn, and I don't know if there's tape that's that small. So it ends up that you have to tape. So you put them inside bottle and then tape up the bottle so that they can't leave. So that way you cannot listen to them, which is funky. So yeah, bro, this one shot probably took like multiple tons of hours to just tactically plan out how the hell you do that to each character. Which, you know what, fair enough. eventually everybody ends up dying and well, actually no, not dying. Everybody ends up exploding after on a molecular level. They hit two atoms together and they explode, and they all end up in the eyeball of Balloony, which I gotta say, that's not as it's not exactly the best sight for sore eyes, but we end up doing the cake at stake. Which ends up having a couple of things. Eventually, the most likes ends up being tennis ball. The tennis ball ends up getting the most likes here for having just overall definitely doing the most in that last challenge. So I'm glad to have correctly gauged that. Because yeah, that felt right. It felt correct for me to do so. Indeed, indeed. Then it's still pretty close, as a lot of like votings are. In general, likes end up being much more evenly spread out, but in this case, tennis ball gets the most. And then in terms of you get a gigantic obelisk as the prize, which yet again for one more episode does become a very vital to the challenge, to be honest. So that's cool. That's cool. Yet again, prizes being useful, actively switching up um for the challenge, which is quite nice. Then eventually their eyes close, which means that everybody dies. Eventually everybody gets recovered. Nico now has a triangular square shaped hole rather than a square one. Um, which I don't know, because Fries could do that. I guess I don't. How did Fries? I think about it. How did Fries even do that? I don't know how Fries. How did you do that? Like what? That does that make sense? I feel like that doesn't make sense, but okay then. So we end up having the locker of losers or whatever, which we have the challenge being one grain of rice divided up three ways. The people safe already win. Tennis ball gets the least dislikes, and then the bottom two end up being Pin and Bommy, and then eliminated is Bommy with 3,000 more dislikes. I am very happy about that. Not because I wanted Bommy to get out. I didn't want Bommy to get out. I'm just very happy to have nailed a prediction. Absolutely, that elimination I nailed to a T. With the likes, I said tennis ball, and I told you why. With the elimination, I narrowed it down to Pin or Bommy, and then I said that Bommy was gonna get eliminated. It wasn't easy, I think, to do, to be honest, considering like there was a fair argument on both sides, but in this case, yeah, Bommy is out. It just kind of a lot of people end up kind of being a little bit mean, quote unquote, in this episode. So you can see that even though like Bommy and Pin end up being the bottom two, Book and Nico are really not that far at all. So yeah, that's like a thing. But all right, then we have the week the WTF. Yeah, everybody thinks that you can leave the WTF. No, you can't leave the WTF because it's just the rubies just bring you in. The Ruby sisters are yes, I'm in, which is certainly interesting. Someone got to put like a sugar drop on the outside or something. I don't know, but then eventually we end up having our challenges, which end up being our teams. So the teams that end up tagging themselves. Hold on, let me check. So the teams are. Okay, so Free Smart gets so like the new teams don't end up actually staying together because why would they? What the hell? Why the hell would they? So Free Smart sticks together with Book and Pencil. Woburn sticks together with Coiny and Pin. Then Fries ends up soloing. Tennis ends up soloing, and then Nico ends up soloing because like because yeah. Um, and then Needle can't decide between Free Smart and Wobunch, so just decides to be both. Like Needle decides to be both Wobunch and Free Smart and just kind of alternate. And eventually they decide to use a sticker on their head. Okay, a sticker that's placed on their head, and then this sticker, what it does is that it swaps out. So whenever you use one, you're officially helping out one team, and if you're using the other, you're helping out the other team, which is what a system. Just that is what a system. And then we end up having the challenge, which is scavenger tag. Basically, they choose a trinket beforehand. Um, which they choose a couple of things, and then we end up having to hide it, which I must admit it's a little bit goofy how they didn't like freaking figure that out before. It's called tag, bro. It's called tag. you know. So what are the trinkets chosen? So tennis ball chooses the obelisk, the treasure possession that they literally just got, which hiding them ends up becoming a little bit more complicated than usual. So yeah, that makes sense. Then the free smart super van is what, of course, free smart chooses because that's the most treasure trinket. That makes perfect sense. Even though it's of course hard to hide. Then Woban chooses the dirt cake, which is pretty smart to be honest, because it technically blends in with so much of a dirt that like you could technically have actually put it underground. And it would have. I mean, you couldn't have placed it underground directly in a way where you would have known, but like it's kind of cool, Like it's cool. Then oh no, sorry. Nico's prized possession is the triangle piece, right, from themselves. Which, all right, that's all fair. That all makes sense. Then who the hell am I forgetting? Am I forgetting? Yes, I am. Fry's trinket ends up being a balloon that they just made on the spot because I guess they didn't, they didn't have anything better. Yeah, I guess the amount of valuable possession that Fry's has, not too many, of a Fry's could have just. I mean, okay, look. If Fry's was an honest player of BFDIA, Fry's would have probably taken one of their fries. That is probably the most valuable thing that Fry's has. It's just the fries themselves. However, obviously they're not gonna do that, right? They're gonna be just doing whatever because Fries is kind of a protester in a way of the show. Like they don't play, like they nearly never play along fully. They always kind of keep it outcast, which is I find Fries a very interesting character here. Because like so often a character like Fries gets outed in these shows, in these object shows, like this type of character that sort of not necessarily just kind of nonchalant refuses competition a bit, and doesn't care. A lot of these characters get out quite early in object shows, and you can see that. I don't think Fries made it that far in any other season, but in this case, for some reason, something about it is BFDIA. Fries gets to thrive. It's a very interesting thing where like characters like Fries don't usually thrive in shows. In this case, with Fries, they manage to thrive, and that does rhyme, and that's why I'm saying it so many times. Ooh, let's go fire bars. um, but yeah, I think it's just because the show is comedy, and Fry just ends up delivering a lot of comedy. Fry's a very memorable character, right? So yeah, it's kind of helps out. Absolutely. Anyhow, we end up having the challenge being apparent you can only tag with hands and feet, meaning that pin that doesn't count. Which, oh well. Then we end up starting. The free smart super van ends up getting tossed around, and then eventually they drive it away to the desert. When doing that, yet again, depending on who does on just pretty much who asks Nito when he requests, they end up trying to um uh, like swapping back and forth, and it was like, I'll help you drive, and then it's like, no, I'll help you catch the car. It's just like, oh hey, I know where you're going. It's like, no, I know help you where you're going. Like, so yeah, Fries tries to get somebody to dig, but nope, it doesn't work. So that's fair enough. Most other people just happen to, for some reason, not to immediately go after the mysteriously shaped gigantic obelisk that's there on the ground dirt structure thing, to be honest. But um, I guess that's okay as well. Then, oh yeah, Nico, in the meantime, tries to chase after the balloon. Because, yeah, honestly, right, the balloon was probably one of the top tier moves from Fries on accident, right? Because, yeah, hide the balloon. You don't really need to hide the balloon if you just let go of it. it'll go. It'll work. So that's pretty nice. Um, which is like ends up. Nico still tries chasing it and eventually manages to catch it, which I'm kind of surprised because, like, I think, okay, In a real situation, what would happen? The balloon would explode, right? That's what would happen, I think. Like at a certain point, in the middle of a flipping storm and stuff, like eventually the balloon would explode and it would drop back down to the ground, and maybe it could get caught. But like in this situation, it does not exactly what's happening because of that. So yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, we end up catching it, but eventually it gets stuck over there because like the balloons wrap around them or something. Oh yeah, Fry's dropped down into a gorgeous looking cave. I don't know who animated this cave, because this cave looks amazing. Look, here's the deal. I ain't gonna lie. In object shows, I'm kind of getting fed because my favorite color is cyan. So like, I'm not gonna lie. Now that I know about this, in both II the other day especially, and BFDIA, we are getting reasons for character to just turn bright cyan, like light blue, like ocean blue levels. Bro, every character looking top. Like every character's looking fire. That's my favorite color, and every character turned into my favorite color. I'm eating good. I'm eating good with these object shows, bro. We gaming. So that's kind of cool. Then eventually what happens? Oh yeah, they try to forest of cutlery or pleasant peachy paradise. Neither. Let's go. Then they're cooking, nearly drowning in corn. And then a pin and fellas are chasing it. So tennis ball's nickel detector doesn't actually figure out that the thing is 1 meter away, but the fact that it's because it's actually taped to their back. I'm not sure who did that. I have no idea who did that. Who could have possibly done that? When could that have possibly happened? I have no idea. Like I've been thinking about it, like when could that have happened? I cannot think of one because like there wasn't, like, in this episode there wasn't necessarily a major time skip. In this episode there wasn't really a major time skip. So it's like I don't really understand how that would have happened. It's like, okay, you take the thing and then you tape it on the back. But I mean, like, as a strategy, it's dangerous, but it could work, right? Like if you have the tool, right, be capable of like not no sorry, if you have the tool, of course, say 1 meter, then that's fine. Because the problem, of course, would have been that if you had hidden the piece, it's pretty easy to hide. But of course, tennis ball has these detectors and skills to be able to track it down, right? With a metal detector or anything else, right? That's why it's kind of one of those things. It's like, for example, oh, you can play tag. Yeah, dig any type of hole, put it in, and then hide it back up, and nobody's ever going to find it. Because why would they dig at that random spot, for example? Well, you see, in this channel that doesn't quite work because tennis ball's still here, right? So since tennis ball is still here, that complicates the situation quite a bit, right? So we end up having a little bit of a situation. It's not that hard. Okay, like I understand why tennis ball would think it's faulty, right? Of course we know that it's not faulty. The reason why we know that it's not faulty is because it's taped to their back. If I would have probably suspected the machine, like it's one of those things where, like, at some point you got to be like, hold on, is this attached to me? Like, is it, like, what is it catching, right? So that way, like, if you put it on the ground, for example, and you stepped away, then it would have said 2 meters away, and then you would know. However, it's that type of experiment, which, I mean, okay, I'd expect someone like tennis ball to do it, because you're smart. Come on, please. That's what you're supposed to be. But an average character, okay, maybe not an average character, fair enough. Then you have the gag where they just are at the gas station. What, bro? He's just drinking petrol, bro. But anyways, what are we doing? Okay, yeah. Then Fries ends up encountering Evil Leafy. They end up, I guess, half chilling with Evil Leafy. Evil Leafy. Okay, Evil Leafy is interesting because Evil Leafy doesn't like is super weird in the way that they attack people. Like the way that Evil Leafy sort of targets people is interesting because they're never like a quick attacker. They always allow somebody to get away. That's like the type. That's like the type of thing. Because if they could have just teleported, I don't know, on top of someone and took over, then that's a thing that you can do. But they don't do that. Instead, they go around right? Like they go around them, stare at them, and then if they are either cornered or can't run anywhere, then Evil Leafy can TP and take over. But for some reason, they can't do that when the character has escaped. When the character has escaped, Evil Leafy has to let them escape. Like that has to be an option that they can take. Otherwise, it doesn't count. In which it's okay. I mean, that's what we're doing. So fair enough, I guess. Then eventually, what's the hell happens? Oh yeah, they all dig underground. It turns out that Needle ends up just absolutely soloing both teams. Like, it turns out that when Wobunch can tell you attack Free Smart and Free Smart can tell you attack Wobunch, you just end up attacking both, and then they both get fucked because you are sabotaging both teams at the same time. So in both cases, Needle immediately just throws right with the trinket. So for example, with the initial trinket, um, for the Free Smart, they try to save Pencil from dying, and they do that. However, they couldn't swap out the sticker in time, which means technically it's tagged. So the Free Smart Super Van gets tagged. The other thing doesn't. And then later they hold the freaking dirt cake, but then they get pushed over by Free Smart. So then they're out or something, right? So then it ends up being quite a little bit of a mess. Which leads us into the final three. So the final three end up mostly getting out roughly at the same time because people are trying. Because Fry's trinket is the freaking it's the balloon in the sky, which of course Nickel has been trying to get this whole time. In the meanwhile, the trinket for Tennis Ball is an obelisk that's incredibly well protected. However, unfortunately, it ends up getting a mascot by freaking Trinket. No, but it gets hold on, it gets destroyed by Nickel because destruction. So yeah, the goodbye to the obelisk. Unfortunately, it was only for this episode. Fry tries to reach it. We conveniently have again Fry's get absolutely zapped, which is kind of crazy because apparently in this whole time Nickel was just learning the ways of the balloons, which you were doing this whole time while we weren't looking. This is one of those episodes that's a little bit convenient. In general, I think that's the tactical theme. Nico ends up winning the channel, by the way, of course, because they end up destroying the obelisk and eventually tagging it because Tennis Ball just can't reach the back of them. So, okay. But yeah, Nico ends up kind of like win challenge. But this episode wasn't too interesting, my ass. Like, I mean, it was fun. It was funky. It didn't do a lot in terms of lore. It was one of those more fillery episodes where we're kind of just doing gags. We're rehashing them quite a bit, you know. We're not kind of we're not switching it up too much. Everything in this episode is pretty much entirely contained to itself, probably except Nickel. Except Nickel's like face change, which is probably gonna stay. But other than that, pretty much everything that happens in this episode is self-contained, right? So like the obelisk, like nothing feels like this episode is actually gonna switch up too much because somebody's getting out on one of the teams, and I don't think it's gonna be anything. Speaking of which, who's getting this prize and who's getting this elimination? I have no idea. You see, this one's a question. I'm thinking, for some reason, I don't know why, but I'm feeling Fry's prize. I think Fry's with the carrot. Oh yeah, Fry's is probably gonna look different. Probably not for Dollar. I don't think Fry's is gonna keep the design change. But anyways, I'm probably thinking Fries gets the prize. I don't know. They were relatively the funnier character in this episode. Finally digging themselves. They have a design change in this episode. They interact with Evil Leafy, which is interesting. They directly counteract Evil Leafy, while everybody's scared of Evil Leafy. So I think Fries, in my opinion, probably Prize deserve it. Even the Tennis Ball might get sad, might get some votes because of the obelisk, but they did already win the prize. So now I'm saying Fries wins the prize. And then elimination is interesting as well because Needle, of course, is here twice. That's kind of the thing. Hold on? Is this an actual thing? I'm not 100% sure. If that's the thing, hold on. Vote for BFDI. Let me check just quickly. Is Needle one thing? No, Needle on both, yeah, has 2 videos. So that is interesting because Needle obviously threw, which means both on the Free Smart end and on the World Bunch end, you want to eliminate them because of course they're doing something hilariously stupid, right? Like, well, what the hell are you doing? You're on both teams, like what? So, however, one of them needs to gain enough traction on the other to get out. Will Needle manage to survive by splitting the votes 50-50, half and half, compared to the rest? Answer, no. I want to say yes because I think it could be interesting if it did. However, my opinion is no. You want to know why? Because you are allowed to dislike both videos. Did you know? You are not forced to only have one vote. If you only had one vote to eliminate, right, like a lot of object shows do, and the both of Needles were there, then in my opinion, Needle would get away with it, and some other character like freaking, I don't know, bro, like Coiny would get out, whatever. But like in this case, I don't think so. I think that Needle gets out anyways, possibly first and second, because like if you're like, oh shit, I gotta dislike the both videos for Needle, right? It's like I don't think there's a way that Needle survives here. Needle feels like they're gone. How would Needle not be gone though? You know, like how would that happen? How would you not be gone right now? Because I'm trying to imagine. Because is Needle still around? Oh god. Nah, you gotta be gone. You have to. I mean, you're funny, but who else gets out? Nobody was that mean. I'm saying Needle. I'm sorry. I have to say Needle. I have to say Needle. Because I think Needle, because the only thing I hate is I think I've once gotten intel that Needle makes it far, but it just Needle has to get out. That has to be this is my prediction. The only wizard I'd ever counteracted against because outside information. From looking at the episode, it's absolutely Needle. Okay. Louis do one more? That's actually a question. I'm completely undecided on that. Bro. Okay, the next section is either going to be BFDI 17 or it's going to be the outro, okay? So, hold on. Alright, so I have decided that that will be all for today's episode of Object Catchup. I almost could fit in BFDI 17, however, I just about didn't quite have the capabilities of squeezing it in today, so that is going to have to be delayed for tomorrow. Tomorrow, I absolutely promise, will be the day of the BFDIA second part of catch-up. We will go from 17 to 22 that day, okay? That is what we're going to be doing. On average, if I'm not mistaken, some of those episodes are longer, and some of them are shorter though. So I don't know. Either way, it's gonna be a big day that day. So that way we'll be prepared for the second to face the wrath of BFDIA 2030. All right. So yeah, that is what I've currently got in store. Very sorry if you've happened to release an episode these few days. I just can't get to it. I really can't. BFDIA these days are classified, certified, BFDIA exclusive. It's gotta be how it's gotta be. I mean, look, this is an Omega episode, and we've watched half of what we need, less than half of what we need to watch. So, like, yeah, tomorrow's an Omega day. Considering today I've actually was quite busy, I'm shocked that I got as much done as I did. Honestly, I was worried that I was gonna be absolutely cooked, but no, I managed to figure it out. I managed to do quite well for myself, which is very, very, very nice. Okay. For the videos that we watched, we're all caught up. There's still half. We're half caught up with BFDIA. There's another half that will be releasing tomorrow. I will do my hardest to get that video out, even if it's like 3 hours. I will be doing that tomorrow because I can't miss BFDIA 23. I cannot do it. Okay, I cannot miss it. So yeah. Okay, that is all for today's video. Goodbye. See you next time.